Looking back, my love of classic Range Rovers bordered on unhealthy obsession. That obsession ended when my EAS went out in West Texas, where I was 100 miles from the nearest Land Rover specialist. Let me tell you, that was one hell of a bumpy ride. Now, I was only partially kidding before. Over the years, I've counted and I've owned 4 Range Rover Classics. Yes, I had some trouble with mine, like I said, with the EAS failure, but overall, these rigs are amazing and have timeless styling. I started my Range Rover obsession with a 93 short wheelbase finished in beluga black over tan leather. Then I bought a beautiful 94 long wheelbase finished in beautiful Brooklands green. I also got a steal on a 42,000 mile 95 Range Rover soft dash classic short wheelbase that I sold and made good money on. And my all-time favorite was a 95 Range Rover Classic long wheelbase finished in a very unique Plymouth blue metallic. So when I saw this 95 Range Rover County Classic long wheelbase with these awesome looking pictures, no brainer, I had to cover it. But before we launch into today's example, if you're new to the channel, I'm Trey and this is Vintage 4-Wheel Auctions. We vet all the active truck and 4x4 category auctions on Bring a Trailer and highlight only the top tier of vehicles from this segment. So if you're in the vintage SUV market, you want to keep an eye on these auctions. With each video, our objective is to discuss and show you what to look for in a vintage SUV and what to avoid. Our hope is this simple video format also encourages interaction with viewers on vehicle condition and ending price points. Starting today, we have a 1995 Land Rover Range Rover County Classic long wheelbase. This is a first generation Range Rover. The first generation Range Rover spanned from 1969 to 1995 internationally, although it did not reach the US shores until 1987. This one has a low 103,000 miles shown with a well-documented CARFAX and California ownership. This 95 Range Rover Classic long wheelbase has a 4.2 liter V8 with a 4-speed automatic transmission. It's finished in black paint over beautiful saddle leather upholstery. Additional equipment includes standard 16-inch Cyclone design alloy wheels, 4-wheel disc brakes, new Bilstein shocks, a power sunroof, taillight guards, cruise control, power windows, and a Pioneer CD stereo. We've got 4 days left on this auction. There are currently 2 bids to $6,000 and there are 10 comments on the auction. Now, we're still in the early stage with this auction, but I do expect it to heat up. Like myself, we do have a lot of Range Rover Classic fans on Bring a Trailer, so I do think this one will go the distance. Before we jump into the pros and cons of this 95 Land Rover Range Rover County Classic long wheelbase, let's take a look at the history of this model. The first gen Range Rover was produced between 1969 and 1995, but only came to the US in 1987. In the early years, the Range Rover was nothing like what we see with the introduction of the US model. The Range Rover was exclusively a 2-door model until 1981 with the introduction of the more contemporary 4-door version. You do see a few of these rest of world pre-87 versions being sold on Bring a Trailer, and let me tell you, they're badass. Not only was this early Range Rover a 2-door model, but it was more Spartan-like like the series Land Rovers. Typically, they had vinyl interiors, plastic dashboards that could be washed down after a day of exploring. I would love to have one of these original utilitarian Rovers. So cool. Very similar to the series Land Rovers, the Range Rover featured a body-on-frame design with a box section ladder type chassis. The original Range Rover used coil springs versus leaf springs and featured permanent 4-wheel drive. Fast forward, these became more upmarket when they were introduced to the US market with more creature comforts like leather seating. Basically, the Range Rover became a status symbol very quickly in the US. The first generation Range Rover ran its course, and with the last year model 1995, it received the name Range Rover Classic to distinguish from the upcoming P38. The 95 saw the introduction of the Land Rover Discovery type dash and was called the Soft Dash by aficionados. Featured a softer Land Rover Discovery type dash as compared to prior version. This last year model has become highly coveted and is highly collectible, as we'll see as we look at the pricing later in the video. Let's look at the pros and cons of this 95 Land Rover Range Rover County LWB. First, with the pros, Land Rover has built a solid reputation and heritage for their off-road capabilities and prowess. For a 95-year model, this has a low 103,000 miles. It also gets extra credit for a repaint of the exterior in classic beluga black, a refinish of the wheels, and what looks to me like a powder coat finish. Looks really great. It's also had replacement of the shocks, steering stabilizer, battery, and tires. This goes a long way to keeping the classic Range Range Rover roadworthy for the foreseeable future. I also saw in the auction details that the seller notes that the factory air suspension has been replaced with a coil spring and shock setup. You heard my story. Smart move. This one also has long-term California ownership in Newport Beach, so it likely has been garage kept and spared the rust exposure of more rust-prone areas of the country. It did do a brief stint in Aspen, Colorado under the care of one owner, but I'm guessing that it was a second vacation vehicle and was garage kept. We'll definitely do a full evaluation of the undercarriage and components with the pictures. The seller reports that the central locking does not function when actuated through the door locks. I also saw in the listing that there's wear on the driver's seat and interior tailgate panel, and that the storage net in the rear cargo area is loose. And even though this one's received a fresh paint, there are still dings present throughout the body as well as a visible dent in the right rear quarter. We'll make sure to highlight anything we see with the picture review. One other thing I noticed is that I think this 95 Classic previously had a factory brush guard that's been since removed. You can see this highlighted in the pictures, which we'll review later in the video. The CARFAX looks solid with this rig. I'm seeing long-term ownership with the first owner, which I like. They owned this Range Rover Classic for almost 22 years and put on 85,000 miles of the 103,000 total miles. To me, that indicates, one, this was either not as much of a maintenance nightmare as some Rovers can be, or two, the owners had deep pockets and put up with it. Either way, based on the entries on CARFAX, this rig was dealer serviced at Land Rover Newport Beach before its vacation out to Aspen, Colorado. Owner number 2 was also in SoCal in the Newport Beach area with CARFAX entries in Newport and Costa Mesa. They drove this vehicle less than 1,000 miles, so I have to imagine this was garage kept and loved. The most recent owner was also in Orange County. I'd love to hear the story of this rig. I'm curious, with a close proximity, did these people all know each other? Look, these have been very collectible since at least 2013. If not earlier. Strange that it never made its way out of the state. That said, there's a ton of money in the Newport area, so not out of the realm of possibility. Outside of the tire rotation service listed at Big O in 2019, it didn't seem like there was a lot of maintenance done at this time of ownership. So really good to hear that the seller's done some work to sort this out. Before we get into the pictures, we always review the comment section first. As I've said on previous shows, this is a best practice that can save you time when you're looking through pictures. The Bring a Trailer audience has extensive knowledge on these marquee vehicles and will often call out areas of concern. Areas like rust, paint or mechanical abnormalities, or potential mechanical watchouts are a few examples. So jumping into the comments here, the first one that I see is from the Motoring Club, which the seller. We acquired this Range Rover last fall from its owner in Newport Beach with the intent to drive it while making small improvements and refreshing the truck along the way, so getting a nice little ownership history here along the way. The steering dampener and shocks were replaced with new parts to refresh the chassis and give this truck ride and compliance that Range Rovers are famous for. The wheels were refinished and brand new tires were mounted on the truck at the same time. So a lot of good work has been done on this Range Rover, like I mentioned earlier in the video. The new owner can rest assured that they're taking home a sorted Range Rover Classic. Here's one that I picked up on and mentioned in the video. I'm thinking that this once had the bull bar, which is removed in the left. 1/2 crushed cans in place were also removed. Did the side molding survive removal and are included in the sale? Thanks. You can see with the grille and the bumper that something's missing. To me, what it looks like is it used to have the Land Rover factory brush guard. This commenter definitely expresses my sentiment with the Range Rover Classic. They've made them faster and fancier, but they haven't made one more handsome since this baby ruled the roost. Can't agree more. The Range Rover Classic has timeless styling and is sexy as hell. We'll definitely see more of why I love Range Rover Classics once we jump into the pictures. This auction has 191 pictures. I've mentioned that best in class when you're looking at an auction on Bring a Trailer and Cars and Bids is 100 pictures minimum. That level of detail gives you confidence that you're getting a full representation of the vehicle, warts and all. So jumping into the pictures, picture number 1 just expresses that timeless styling and boxiness. I love it. Looking at picture number 2, just beneath the bumper, you see these kind of half cans the commenter was talking about. Those were a support function for the Land Rover genuine factory brush guard. Again, just timeless style and sheer elegance with this Range Rover Classic long wheelbase. Always loved the side profile of the Range Rover Classic, this high roof line, so much glass, it really stood out from the pack. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with this right bumper end cap here. Seems like it would have been an easy fix prior to the auction. That being said, relatively minor. Another favorite view of mine. The boxiness and overall look of these Range Rover Classics just screamed fancy import. As you can see in picture number 8, the long wheelbase gained an additional 8 inches versus the short wheelbase version. I do like the look of these refinished wheels wrapped with BFG KO2 tires. The stout look. I do like the look of these finished in some of the color choices like Brooklyn's green and Plymouth blue, but I think the black has always just been a classic. The majority of Land Rover Classics that I own did have the Land Rover factory genuine brush guard, but I've got to say I do like just this original grille by itself. It looks very classic. I believe this is the dent that the seller referenced in the listing. Some other minor wear here in picture 40 right next to the tailgate window. We'll definitely want to take a closer look at the tailgate window. This was an area that was rust prone. Picture 48 starts the series of paint meter pictures. I'm not too concerned in this area. This vehicle has been repainted per the listing. Picture 80, another great shot of these refinished wheels. They look great. In my opinion, better than factory. Picture 82, we jump into the interior. Always love the interiors on these Range Rover. They had a very heavy overbuilt feel to them. Picture number 84, we do see some wear on the driver's seat. This was listed in the auction. We do see some scuffs in the interior in picture 89. We also see this on the other door. I think it's also missing the cargo component. Passenger seat slightly worn, but in better condition than the driver's seat. Picture 96, we're seeing the first close-up example of why this is called a soft dash. The 95s moved to the Discovery style dash, which was softer than prior versions. Now, putting aside the collectability of the 95 being the last year model, I actually preferred the 94 and earlier with the hard dash. I feel like the soft dash gave it somewhat of a down market look similar to the Discovery. Nice full view here of the interior and the dash. You can see it's identical to the Discovery of the era. Per the listing, 103,000 miles on the odometer. The 95s also had a shifter more in line with the Discovery from that time period. Back seat looks in very good condition with minimal wear. I always like the openness and airiness of these Range Rover Classics. My sunroof got a lot of use. This gives you a good view of just how much additional space you get with the long wheelbase version. Picture 127, I'm not sure what this is, some sort of oil or debris. Not sure why the seller did not clean this prior to the auction. These Range Rover Classics, especially the long wheelbase version, had significant cargo area, especially when you put the back seats forward. Nice shot of this 4.2 liter V8 engine. Moving to picture 163, this marks the first undercarriage picture of this Range Rover Classic. As I suspected, it's looking pretty clean so far with this Southern California ownership. Just looking at picture 164, I might question, was some sort of undercarriage protectant applied? We'll definitely make sure to look in the upcoming pictures. To me, in picture 165, I'm not really seeing any indication of that. Again, nice picture here. You can see with proper lighting, this is very clean and dry. Picture 177, you can see very clearly that these are new BFG KO2s. I like that the seller went blacks out on these BFG KO2s. That's what I do with my personal rigs. This one does have the Land Rover factory books. In pictures 190 and 191 do show receipts in the amount of roughly $3,100. Taking a look at pricing for this 95 Range Rover Classic long wheelbase, I limited my analysis only to 95 long wheelbase soft dash Range Rover Classics. The fact that this is a last year model and a long wheelbase does make it unique in its own regard. I'm seeing 13 closed auctions on Brand Trailer for long wheelbase classics in the past year. The high water mark is $50,000 for a 91,000 mile example finished in attractive Plymouth blue that sold in September of 2022. Another great example is this long wheelbase from California with 102,000 miles that sold in September 2022 for $38,000. Extremely clean rig with solid ownership in dry climates, California, Oregon, and Montana. So we have what I consider a low and high pricing range for this rig. I think the pros outweigh the cons here, and I expect as interest heats up in the last few days, the auction will do very well. So what do you guys think about this 95 Land Rover Range Rover County Classic long wheelbase? We'd love to hear your feedback on pricing and condition in the comments. Also, we are a new channel, and if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe. This goes a long way to inspire creation of future content. Thanks again for watching. See you next time for more vintage four-wheel drives.